Nistro, you're like 3 years late with this video, and yeah, but you know, I put 100 hours into this game, and now I want to talk about it, so that's what we're gonna do. It's not like it's the worst Warriors game out there, right? Like Dynasty Warriors 9 exists, you know, so it could get worse. You know, that's just a Koei Tecmo thing. We're talking about Fire Emblem Warriors, right? And this isn't gonna be a video about the state of Fire Emblem. This is gonna be about Fire Emblem Warriors specifically, because that's the one, that's the Fire Emblem game that I put the most time into, simply because it's a Warriors game. I purchased 3 houses, but I haven't actually tried it out yet. So this is sort of a thing that I do, where I sort of stock up on games during the year, and then I play them throughout the holidays. Like what I did with Valkyria Chronicles, I got that game for like a Black Friday deal, and I didn't really touch it until like New Year's. Sometimes I just get games and I just don't play them for a while, and you know, it's sort of like that. It's sort of what I'm doing with like Crash 4 right now, but that's that's not the point. So Fire Emblem Warriors is like the Team Sonic Racing of Fire Emblem. It's like way too hyper focused on one small era of Fire Emblem, focuses on teamwork and creating interactions between the characters, but doesn't do much to appeal to people who aren't really fans, right? When it came to Hyrule Warriors, at the least, like it felt like, at least, even though I'm not a big Zelda fan, it felt a lot more representative of what Legend of Zelda was. Essentially with Fire Emblem Warriors, it's like the story's bland, it's like the setting is like vague, there's like forgettable and unplayable villains, right? Where it's like, I sort of forget the Fire Emblem villains sometimes because they don't really do a lot to make themselves stick out. Now, Iago is like a sort of interesting villain, and Garneth are sort of interesting villains. I sort of confuse them a lot, and even though I've played Fire Emblem Fates, I'm like, wait, Garneth, Iago, you know, I still sort of get them confused. It's sort of like a problem I have with Fire Emblem as a series, and not really the fault of Fire Emblem Warriors. But the problem is that when you don't make villains playable, like Warriors games are the best type of games for you to play as a character that you wouldn't normally use in like a regular video game, right? That's the whole point of a Warriors game, right? Like Hyrule Warriors let you play as Zelda, right? Like other than Smash, you know, you've never really gotten to play Zelda much in freaking Zelda games, you know? They let you play as, you know, like Impa and Sheik and you know, a whole bunch of other characters, Midna as well. You know, there's a lot more to Hyrule Warriors than just being like Legend of Zelda in Musou form. It actually had good representation of the characters, although the story wasn't amazing, but it was a lot better than what Fire Emblem Warriors had going for it. It was actually a lot more engaging, I feel, especially for someone who's a non-Zelda fan or not much of a Zelda fan. I think it was pretty interesting to sort of see it all go down, but it all boiled down to, you know, women fight over Link, right? This new Hyrule Warriors game that we're getting this year, next month actually, is going to be a lot more interesting, because it's actually like a prequel to Breath of the Wild. And even though I haven't played Breath of the Wild yet, like, oh, I know, 10 out of 10 game, I haven't played it, what am I doing? I'm most definitely gonna get that Hyrule Warriors Musou game, because it looked really, really interesting. Same thing for Persona 5 Scramble. I'm waiting for that thing to come out in America. I've already looked up all the cutscenes, like with subtitles on YouTube. There's actually a way to do that, because the game's in Japan only right now, and I love it, right? Especially if you've already played Persona 5. Persona 5 Scramble works as like a sequel. I thought, you know, it was just an amazing way to take what Persona 5 did and turn it into a Musou game without exactly stripping it of what made Persona 5 real interesting. In Scramble, they had a lot less characters to work with, which is why they made a whole lot more unique aspects of gameplay, but it's still, you know, in essence a Musou game or a Warriors game, whichever you prefer to call it. Fire Emblem Warriors doesn't really feel like it's pushing that limit of, this feels like a good representation of the series. It's like the setting in the game is already vague enough, right? Because it's like, other than Hoshido and Nor, like a lot of the settings are very forgettable. And that's another thing I have with Fire Emblem. It's like they sort of make up their own countries and shit, and then they just have like these weird ass names that it's like, unless you're like a really deep Fire Emblem fan, I couldn't tell left from right in some of these stages. It's like, other than Hoshido and Nor, which are very recognizable because not only do they have characters tied to those regions, but it's like they also have really distinct styles as well. It's like everything else sort of just feels the same. The only real way to know like what's different is if you really go through history mode and play through all of that. But the problem is that it's only focused on 3 different Fire Emblem games, right? So it's focused on Awakening, Fates, which is the only Fire Emblem game that I've played so far. And, you know, I'm going to play 3 Houses, you know, later on. And Shadow Dragon's the 3rd game, which I actually have played Shadow Dragon, actually. But Fates is the only one that I've beaten. I haven't beaten Shadow Dragon or the one with Roy, the one where Roy is the main character. I haven't beaten those games, but I've tried them out at the very least. Fates is the only game that I've, you know, seen one of the endings to because I played Birthright. And so outside of those 3 franchises of Fire Emblem, they don't really put much characters that are outside of those 3. It's really, really sad when you see Smash, when I saw the Byleth trailer in Smash, and I'm like, huh, that's pretty interesting. Now, where's Byleth in Fire Emblem Warriors, right? In the Fire Emblem-based Warriors type game, but like with RPG elements, there actually are a lot of RPG elements, and you know, Fire Emblem Warriors isn't all bad, but it's missing a lot. And Smash Bros. Having pretty much a character from each generation of Fire Emblem makes it feel like, in a way, it somewhat feels like a better representation of Fire Emblem in some ways, right? Not just because of the characters, but also because of their movesets and also stages as well. Stages are a lot more recognizable, right? So what Fire Emblem did is that they took like the idea of Coliseum mode and they just turned it into a stage, right? It's not, it might just be one of the stages from Awakening, but it just feels a lot more unified in its idea, where it's like, okay, the Coliseum is a pretty normal mode in Fire Emblem, so let's just make that the stage, right? It doesn't feel like it's a part of a particular game. It feels like any character, any Fire Emblem character can sort of go there, you know? The like arena stage from Fire Emblem Awakening as well. That one, it's a little less dynamic, but it sort of has the same idea. And I think that's sort of more of what Fire Emblem Warriors should have focused on. It should have focused on more, other than Hoshido and Nor, it should have focused on more dynamic places to put these characters in. And then even when Byleth came out, they had like the Hogwarts building as a stage, which I've always called 3 Houses Fire Emblem Hogwarts, because that's pretty much what it is for like the first 30 minutes of the game. It's pretty cool that Smash still got Byleth, even though a lot of people didn't really like Byleth. He wasn't really intrusive, right? Because if you look at DLC Pack 1, you got a lot of heavy hitters on there. You know, like Hero from Dragon Quest, Joker from Persona 5, Banjo-Kazooie, and Terry from King of Fighters. Are you serious? Like, they're, you know, like Sakurai actually, you know, being a King of Fighters fan, being you know, a big Persona 5 fan, being a big Dragon Quest fan, like even being a big Fire Emblem fan, you know, like Sakurai is a Fire Emblem fan. And, you know, I know that some people don't like to hear that because they think Fire Emblem is like, oh man, there's too much Fire Emblem in Smash. He's a legit fan of the series. And, you know, I'm not going to hold it against him. Like, if Smash just became a Fire Emblem fighting game, I wouldn't even be mad. I know some people would, but I wouldn't, right? As long as there's a diverse range of characters, unlike in Fire Emblem Warriors. Let's get into the range of characters here, because when it comes to how many characters there actually are in the game, it's sort of deceiving, right? So there's about 40 or like 30 to 40 characters in the game. About like 10 to 15 of them are actually clones of other characters. It's really like stupid when a DLC character is a clone of a character that's already in the game. You know, like that's where I sort of got mad, right? With Navarre, you know, being my favorite character. So I ended up, you know, buying the DLC before I beat the game. So I unlocked Navarre before I unlocked Lyn. And so I didn't realize is that Navarre was just a clone of Lyn. But, you know, Lyn was in the game first. So, you know, in my perspective, I thought, okay, Navarre's unique, he's cool, and then I come out to find that he's a clone, right? Well, I did all this work to unlock Lyn, because you have to unlock her after beating the game. You go into history mode and do all that nonsense, but it's like it's just a clone character, so now I just did all this work for nothing. But what ended up happening was that Fire Emblem Warriors was originally going to put Celica in as a character even before they figured out about the Fire Emblem Echoes Shadows of Valentia, right, which was pretty much a remake of one of the very classic Fire Emblem games, like the second one, I believe. And then they found out that they was making a remake, and so they took the design from the remake from Fire Emblem Echoes and put it into Fire Emblem Warriors, and that's why she's in the game. It's not because Echoes was coming out, it's because she just happened to be a character pick, and they just updated her design, and she's in the base roster as well. You can unlock her by playing history mode after you beat the game, just like Lynn. It was a little disappointing to see how many clone characters there are. Like archers, there is no unique archer. Every archer plays the exact same way, and that's what got me. And like that's when it like really started getting me annoyed. Clone characters are like a little there's a little too much with the clone characters in Fire Emblem Warriors, and it's really sad. It really gets like dry quickly. It's like having so many clones in a single game. It's sort of like a Koei Tecmo seal of approval. Like I have a little vendetta against Koei Tecmo, where I just think most of their games are just half-assed, but they have so much content that you can sort of look away from the lack of quality and sort of just like it has quantity over quality, which is always how I felt about Samurai Warriors. This is why I play it, because having a lot to do in a game can sometimes make up for a lack of quality. So there is sort of a balance there that sort of helps it build the gameplay experience when you can do a lot of things in a game. Now, the reason why Fire Emblem Warriors, I think, it's worth playing after a certain while is one, because of the team combinations, the dialogue that they have with each other. After you get up to a certain rank, you can you sort of get like unique dialogue between certain characters. Like one of my favorite characters in the game is Frederick, and his dialogue with Leo was like the most hilarious thing ever. I absolutely loved it.
Your collar, my lord. It's inside out.
No, that's not possible. Oh, damn!
I was hoping you'd just notice, eventually, but here we are. I could not in good conscience remain silent any longer, my lord.
Is this what you were hinting at with all that talk about fashion?
Yes, my lord. I was not bold enough to tell you straight out. I apologize.
No. It's my fault, of course. You must come to me directly if this ever happens again. A fashion yes man is no good to me. I need someone who can speak the truth.
I understand. Then, since we are speaking openly...
Please, let me hear it.
You have worn your collar inside out precisely 36 times since we met. I thought perhaps I might be able to prevent a 37th.
36? Someone must die! I mean... Thank you.
You're welcome. And there's one other thing.
Very well. Get it over with.
The other morning, you nearly wore your nightcap into battle.
No, I caught myself before actually walking into battle. How did you know?
Well, I was positioned nearby to speak to you about something else. Namely, that you had brought your pillow instead of your spellbook.
Did I really?
I was quite surprised to see you look directly at the pillow several times.
That is enough, Frederick. In the future, I need you to be more proactive.
Yes, I understand. If I see that your trousers are on inside out and backwards, I should speak up. I will be happy to add this to my list of daily duties, my lord.
And sort of seeing that they're dynamic together, even though they're from different games, it was still pretty interesting to sort of see these two characters sort of get along. Frederick sort of helping him out like on the low to like make sure he's on top of his game. I thought that was a really interesting dynamic between the characters, and there's a lot of that. Ryoma and Xander becoming buddies when those two are pretty much like at war with each other the rest of the game. It sort of reminded me of like Mitsunari and Ieyasu from like Sengoku Basara, the way that those two are always like fighting with each other. It's like they can never really see eye to eye, and Korn's really that bridge in the middle. Except, in Sengoku Basara, there really is no bridge in the middle between Mitsunari and Ieyasu, but still, it was sort of interesting to see that dynamic play out. The reason why that's so good is because characters have unique skills that they can unlock once you get up to a certain friendship level. And so those skills are actually what makes the game a lot better, or a lot cooler, a lot more interesting, a lot more unique. And so like spending the time to unlock those skills and unlock like the strongest power or like the hidden power of their main weapons is very interesting. And I think that's sort of where the game shines. You know, grinding in Warriors games is usually extremely worth it. It is usually worth it to the point where it makes the game worth playing. With Fire Emblem Warriors, that sort of is the case, but there's so much dry content here that's more dry content than usual, right? It's like usually Warriors games tend to have a lot of unique aspects about them, but Fire Emblem Warriors again and again is going to feel very bland, and I don't think it's going to have a lot of players that want to keep going back to it. But if you do go back to it, there is something a little rewarding to continually play through it. And even with the DLC history mode, I think history modes are really cool, the way that you can like level up, and you can even go past level 100. And sometimes having like weaknesses and like affinities are sort of cool sometimes when like you have the advantage, but also sucks because Corrin is like a worm or like a dragon or something like that, and then when your opponent has Dragon Slayer, you see a little exclamation mark over their head, and it's like, shit, man, I can't fight this guy if he's a different character. So sometimes that sort of sucks. There actually are a lot of like interesting combo loops you can do with like a certain character once you get like Astra, and then you can like, it's actually really fun. It's why I like using Ryoma a lot. I think Ryoma is pretty cool, even though his supers are lame, but like playing with him is pretty cool. I guess that's the last thing I should talk about, like the villains of the game. Or I've already talked about the villains, but it's like there's no boss fights, right? Like in Hyrule Warriors, there was a lot of unique bosses that would take a dynamic shift in the gameplay. So like in like Hyrule Warriors, not only did you have like your moveset where, you know, you did all these combos, but you also have items that also opened up the game to make it a lot more interesting, right? You had a bomb, you had like a chain, you had certain things, right? And against certain bosses, you had to use certain items certain ways, right? So every character had access to the exact same items, but it's like those items would really only be useful against certain bosses or in certain situations. And so it sort of made it so that, you know, it had to be like a battle of knowledge where you had to know this boss's weakness, right? There is no big boss in Fire Emblem Warriors except for like one giant dragon, where after you get to a certain level, the dragon really isn't a big deal. There's nothing like unique about it. You literally just hit it until it dies, and that's really it. And so it's like there's no real climax to the game except for in like history mode, where the very last stage in every map is like a representation of like what happened in the game, and I think that's pretty cool. But other than that, it's like the game lacks content, and it reuses a lot of assets for like different scenarios in history mode, which I really didn't like as well. It sort of made a lot of shit like random. It felt like a lot of the shit in history mode is like just being pulled out of someone's ass, if I'm gonna be completely honest. I've ranted on for like 25 minutes now. This is just me rambling on about my opinions of Fire Emblem Warriors as a game. It's worth grinding if you can deal with, you know, if you're a big enough Fire Emblem fan, or even like a half decent Fire Emblem fan, it's cool. But if you're like if you're like a fan of like the older Fire Emblem games, or if you want to see more content, it's a really disappointing game. I hope they do make a sequel and they do improve on a lot of the problems that the first game had, because I do see potential in Fire Emblem Warriors. It's just not as strong of a contender as other Warriors games. You know, it sort of has a Koei Tecmo problem where the game sort of feels half-assed at times, which is why I couldn't play Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3. Like, that shit just felt so half-assed after a while, where if I wasn't playing with friends, the game was like absolutely horrible in my opinion, and it felt really like bland and like forgettable, if I'm being honest. That's why Persona 5 Scramble is such a big deal to me, because it feels like Koei Tecmo is sort of taking this turn. And then after seeing the Hyrule Warriors prequel, the Age of Calamity, I believe its name is, that sort of turned my opinion as well, where it's like, okay, now Koei Tecmo is making really good Warriors games, and usually with their Warriors Orochi, those are pretty decent. Warriors Orochi 4 wasn't as good as 3, but 4 still has a lot of unique characters and still a lot of unique scenarios and, you know, ways to grind up. So I wouldn't say it's not fun, because, you know, doing combos and stuff, like especially with characters like Navarre, is very fun. You know, like once you sort of find your character, you sort of find your way. Like Frederick as well. Frederick's a really fun character. It's just, you just have to find a character that just suits you and sort of just go for it. Like, my rule with Warriors games is that if you're not having fun, then you're not playing the game properly. And it's like they're like, and I mean this about the gameplay of the game, like the way that you use characters. If you're not having fun with the character, you're not using the character the right way, or you haven't unlocked everything that you're supposed to unlock to have fun with the character, which sort of sounds a little sus to people who haven't played the game. It's like I have to learn how to, you know, do all this and that. But trust me, it's more than worth it. You'll eventually become like a fucking god at the game once you know, reach a certain level, and you know, like combos and how to do certain loops and when to, you know, dodge at the right time so that, you know, you can continue your combo, or, you know, like what combos into what and what combo to do against who. It can get really interesting. At the end of the day, it's still a Warriors game. I pretty much played the game to death, and there's still more content, you know, and as I said, it's always with Warriors games, it's always going to be quantity over quality, always. That will never change about a Warriors game. But, you know, the ones with quality, those just might be the ones worth playing, that are actually worth your time. If you haven't tried Fire Emblem Warriors out yet, I would say look for a sale. If you want to play as like characters as like, you know, like Chrom or Ryoma. Ryoma was like the selling point for me. Corrin's not too interesting in the game. And you're probably going to want the DLC. Because the history mode maps are very good for the like final mode of like the weapons as well. So like unlocking the true power of your weapons, you might want DLC for that. I think I should probably stop rambling on and tell you guys this has been Sir Nistro of the Robotic Unit. Let me know what you guys think about Fire Emblem Warriors in the comment section below, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Stay safe and stay smart. Peace. Like, all the main characters are sword characters, which I think was just so lame. It's like they couldn't put like even one, you know, they couldn't put any variation in that. Did they really think that was a good idea? Like, did they really sit there and think, well, we have to make every single main character a sword character, or else people won't think, or people will think the game's sus or some shit like that? I don't know. That shit was very weird. Like the game Lyn is from. You know, because the main characters are like lords of their respective kingdoms, right? And so that's why they're the main characters, because they're the lord of their kingdom. And usually the other characters from their games are like their followers or people who are also, you know, in their kingdom, right? And so what's weird is that they chose Lyn as one of the extra characters for Fire Emblem Warriors, when Hector is sort of from the same series as Lyn, and Hector is also a lord, but he has a axe. Actually, he plays with an axe, right? And so it's so weird. It's like there isn't a lot of variation in like the main characters, and so you're not even gonna put in a lot of other different unique classes as well. Like mages are sort of their own class, but it's like Robin, and then there's Leo, and those are the really only two types of mages. And then Linde, or Lind, however you pronounce it, who was DLC, she was a little unique, but, you know, not unique enough. You know, it's like it was sort of too little too late. Tharja was just a clone of Robin, you know, and that was a little sad, although it makes sense, they're from the same game.